Okay, so Mo, firstly, you want to have some opening words for the Path Launch community. How excited are you to be here?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you all for having me. And I don't know how many more talks there are, so appreciate the presence and awareness. It's been amazing to see this vibrant community. I've heard so much about it for a long time, and when you invited me to come speak, it's clearly an honor. I am a first generation Pakistani immigrant, and it means a lot for me to be here, and it means a lot to me that we have this beautiful group of people that make it comfortable for me to be here. Often I'm the only brown person on the stage, and now I'm just another brown person. Now we're doing that on the stage, but that's a good thing. That's the world that we want to be moving towards, and I'm very proud of this community, and it's an honor.
So I think we want to start with the story, right? So take us through the story. And people say that Pakistanis are resilient. We go through a lot as a community, as a nation. And I think I have heard, obviously, your journey straight from your mouth. It was beautiful. And I want the audience also to hear about your journey, how you, as a first generation Pakistani, came to America. Before that, you went to Abu Dhabi. You weren't born in Pakistan, I think, born in Abu Dhabi. Take us through the entire journey. I know, your parents were from the working class. And then you got the best education and you landed into some of the best blue chips out there as well. So yeah, more story.
Yeah, maybe the best education really means the education of the streets in New York City. But and I'll be very candid because I feel comfortable in this room. So don't mind me cursing or being colorful. My parents are from an area in Pakistan called Lines. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with it, but it's not the best neighborhood in Pakistan, nor is it the best neighborhood in Karachi by far. And it's called Lines because people are throwing lines, say, scrap for electricity. My father was a tailor in the Pakistani army, and he was asked to go to Abu Dhabi. And my mom, who had her master's in religious studies in Pakistan, my father, by the way, didn't even graduate from high school. He was somehow able to convince my mom to move to Abu Dhabi, and I was born there. My sister was born there. I was born in 1986, to ground perspective from our time horizon. And during that window, George Bush Sr. had actually really started making a very strong push for immigration here in the U.S. And my dad was like, "Okay, Abu Dhabi is nice. It still has a long way to go." And my mom was excited about our education potentially there. But they eventually realized, okay, we should seek, coming to the U.S. So my dad convinced my mom. My mom begrudgingly applied and literally hit the lottery. And you know how Pakistani weddings are. We have a lot of jewelry. And so they had to sell all their wedding jewelry to be able to afford to buy tickets to come here. And we moved to an area in Brooklyn because there was like some uncle of a friend who happened to say Brighton Beach is also is a beach. That was the defining criteria, and we landed in a group of Russian Jewish people, and realized, well, this is not the beach that we were expecting. So very interesting education that I got in growing up in that environment as the only brown person probably, and thankfully for that, it shaped many things to come. I had a couple of good friends, and my dad was working multiple jobs. We grew up on food stamps and welfare, and just trying to make ends meet, living in a basement apartment. My parents had three of my siblings in the U.S. too, and it's five of us really crammed in all the way until I graduated from college. And my dad worked two jobs. He was a sewer in a bedding factory in the daytime, and at night he drove a taxi cab. And when, the taxi cab part was the most exciting part, because how much you make at the bedding factory. But when your taxi fare is a complete variable, no one knows how much you're going to make any night. And he would come home and say, I drove all these people and I made $100, but I only came home with 50. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. Why? And every penny mattered for us, literally. And so just really trying to understand how these value chains work. Why are they the way they are? And kind of this insatiable curiosity of why can't things be better really grounded me. I went on to go study at Hunter College, so not the best institution in the world, I would say, but a great one for me. And I studied economics and psychology. I went on to work at KPMG, at RBC, at BlackRock. And to be frank, like, people aren't really looking for people like me from those places. And so just had to like hustle and meet people, build good relationships, prove our work, of course, because like, we're brown people that work hard. And so the model stereotype in a good way. And luckily I had some great friends and mentors that pulled me up along the way. Saket is sitting right here, actually. And I'll get to that. And, great organizations that believed in people like me, individuals that believed in me, kept kind of pushing me. I went to business school. I went to the University of Rochester. But I'll maybe go back a little bit. I really love basketball. And I really love music. I love hip hop a lot. And I remember when the iPod first came out, actually I was selling CDs in high school, just being very clear with you guys, and not, trying to make money. And so just like, on the newsfeed, the buyers said, no, hustling. Entrepreneurship. Let's stay on theme here. And when the iPod first came out, everyone realized, okay, it's really hard to put music on here. And I happen to know how to put music on an iPod. And one of my good friends, he had season Knicks tickets, so we would go to a basketball game here and there, and we knew where the NBA players would come out after the games. So I had this crazy idea of like, well, these players love listening to music for the warm-up. Maybe I can put music on an iPod and convince them to buy that instead of selling hundreds of CDs, which is not necessarily the best use of my scalable time. And eventually we convinced a couple of Knicks players to buy our iPod. Entrepreneurship, just to be clear. And that's when I think I realized, okay, entrepreneurship could mean something more than just like an idea or a dream. So that kind of stuck with me, and inefficiency stuck with me. Fast forward, I go to business school and I tried to start up there. And long story short, it ended up getting acquired. But I thought entrepreneurship was still a joke and a stroke of luck, a very risk-seeking endeavor. And I joined BCG, and also was hard to join BCG because they're not really recruiting at University of Rochester. And moved to Dubai. Was very fortunate to go there. And it was a very important thing for me to do, having kind of been born there. The interesting thing was it almost felt like a little bit of a full circle, and I'll talk a little bit about Pakistan. In 2015, when I was doing my summer internship, I thought I was going to go right back into asset management and, putting a suit back on. And I met Saket. And I heard about this really aspiring company that's trying to change the world with another Pakistani founder.
This is getting funny. Huh?
Yeah, and another Pakistani founder, and this company called Abraj. I thought this would be an amazing full story for me to go back to Pakistan. I had never been. I speak Urdu. I'd never been to Pakistan. And I reached out to Saket, and Saket kind of helped me get that opportunity. And I spent the summer in Karachi, never having been to Pakistan my entire life. And, my Urdu it's all right. It's good enough to get by. But they put me in the Sin Club. And they're like, don't leave this place. You stay in the Sin Club. Don't go anywhere without us. And so I was like, okay. But I got to meet my family. I got to meet my grandparents for the first time. My mom, who was fighting breast cancer at the time, came and flew out to meet me. And it was amazing to be sitting in a room with my grandmother, my grandfather, and my mother, who my mother had not been to Pakistan since she had immigrated, because, again, we were very poor. Sadly, my mom passed away after that, and my grandfather and my grandmother passed away as well, all three back to back, right before I graduated business school. And that's kind of when I knew I had to go to Dubai and join BCG. And then, while I was at BCG, did kind of the classic consulting stuff, put on a suit every day, traveled to Riyadh, to Abu Dhabi, to Kuwait, to Qatar, and did some consulting stuff, which was amazing. In 2016, you can imagine what was happening with Vision 2030, with Aramco, with many other amazing initiatives. 2 central banks wanted to send money back and forth. They wanted to use a blockchain. And that's when I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I already have some Bitcoin. Maybe this is going to be something. And that pulled me to the space. That catapulted me to join the Ethereum community very early on. In 2017, when Ethereum was nothing. It was like $50, no developers. Today it's $2,500 and like thousands of developers. I tried to build a product in that space that failed massively, and I can get into that. But eventually Facebook reached out and said, hey, we're building our own blockchain. And we think moving money across the world is a very important initiative for us. We already do that with WhatsApp, Instagram, et cetera. And I joined Facebook to work on that initiative. Some of you may know it as Libra or the DM project. That also failed massively. But what was amazing is what came out of the ashes of that was an amazing blockchain, one that can move money seamlessly across the world in a way that you don't have to worry about fees. You don't have to worry about sending money back home and Remitly price gouging on you through FX and whatnot. And so we asked Facebook if we can leave and continue on this mission and do it independently. They said yes, which took a lot of convincing. Basic CNZ backed us. We raised $200 million in our seed round. I left New York and moved to the Bay Area 3 years ago, which was a little sad. I still love New York. And we raised another $200 million in our Series A. We're now 150 people, 25 PhDs, some of the world's best engineers from Facebook, from many places. We have an office in New York, in Soho as well. That's a very long answer, but I think that's the full story.
No, perfect. So I'm gonna, also ask you some desi stuff in the middle, right? And I'm sure there are those aunties and uncles in the family that sometimes, you try and explain to them what you do, and you build like a 9 billion company, and they're like putri hota cat. So, how do you explain what you do to your family now, given all of this great success that you will achieve?
I mean, you kind of know my dad, right? Like I talked about that. We had an event in Hong Kong all around the future of finance. We're actually working with the Hong Kong government on creating a central bank digital currency on our blockchain, the electronic Hong Kong dollar. And we're working with folks like Invesco, BlackRock, and others. And so we host this community event, and I was like, my dad's gonna be so proud. I'm gonna invite him. He's gonna love this. So I bring him to the event. The venue's, a little bit bigger than this. It's packed. And I come to give like the opening speech. I have my daughter with me and whatnot. And my dad goes, he was just like standing there. Eventually, I get off the stage, and one of my colleagues comes up to me and is like, does your dad know what you do? And I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, I explained it to him many times. And he goes, yeah, he asked me who's responsible for all this and what are you guys doing here? So yes, I explained it to them, but they kind of don't get it. And but I think they're, my dad is just proud, and I'm sure, I'm sure my mom is proud as well.
Oh, that's amazing, and we're all proud of you, by the way.
Appreciate that, DK.
So I want to just come back to something, because I know you've mentioned about the great career that you had, and it obviously includes some great blue chip names. Now, since the audience here is a lot of Pakistani founders who are traveling all the way from Pakistan, and sometimes, they don't have the best CVs when they start a company or they start an idea that they really believe in. It's very disruptive. They've got the potential, but they don't have the CV, right? They don't have the BlackRocks and the Metas on their profiles. They don't have the Stanfords. And they sometimes have to shortchange. They have to go for, other investors like family offices who probably don't even understand, what they're building, but they're just looking to invest into younger entrepreneurs. So what is your advice? Because again, you look at it from a different lens. Sometimes founders who are coming from those backgrounds and don't have the best CVs, they look at it differently. But you've seen the other side. And I know you obviously interact with some of the most successful entrepreneurs globally who probably don't have those profiles. So what is it that you recommend, entrepreneurs like these, how do they tackle the situation? How do they stay committed to the cause on what they're building?
Yeah, it's a very complex question, but I'm kind of curious, like how many entrepreneurs are in the room, just like by show of hands? Okay, and how many investors? Or entrepreneurs find those investors? I mean, it's hard enough to have the courage to say, I'm going to go and do this on my own, or even like join a startup that's just like, one other person, right? That requires a lot of I think, confidence. And often I think that is one of the most important things that's so simple, but often overlooked. And so I would say, like, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself you're just as good as anyone, if not ideally, you're better than others. So I think that part is, it almost sounds so cliche and so corny, but like, I do think that is the most important thing. Personally for me, I do operate with a sense of like, I don't know, like it feels like it'll all be gone tomorrow, right? Like how many people wake up and are like, this is maybe an accident. I gotta fight to just keep whatever I had. This is, an imposter syndrome thing that just like keeps reoccurring. But I think we do need people that you need to first tell yourself that you can do it, but you also need to have an amazing support system that extends beyond just your colleagues, your friends, your family, your wife, your husband. I think this is an amazing like version of that, right? Like having a group of people that can also tell you, because I want to feel like, Saqib is telling me I can do it, right? Because you do need people to coach you and build you up. And I think we don't have that enough as entrepreneurs. You could always have more of that. But I think being of like people of color, Pakistani, or not the average individual, I think it's really important to build each other up. And I think I can't overstate that.
Awesome. So again, and we're trying to not keep this too technical because I do understand that there's only like 3 or 4 people in this room who probably understand what Web3 and blockchain is. And the first guy who understood was actually Tim Draper, who left early morning. So I want to ask you on your vision of becoming the L1 for the massive, which is huge. And, I obviously, since I'm part of the ecosystem now, I can see how you're moving towards that vision. But for a layman, someone who doesn't really understand what decentralization is, what Web3 is, what the blockchain does, what is this decentralized future of consumption where people will be able to consume finance, music, media, entertainment, gaming in a decentralized world where they're more powerful? What is that vision of a decentralized world to more?
Yeah, and I guess maybe I'll first start off with saying that decentralization is certainly a spectrum, and we can talk about the depths of things like Nakamoto coefficient, which is used to measure decentralization, at least in our space. But I think the most important thing is what is really centralized right now that doesn't work. Right, there is a problem that is worth solving. Right now, you go and rely on very large sources of truth to either govern your identity, govern your money, govern all sorts of your part of your lifestyle, and they're pulling fees out of you and value out of you without you knowing it, whether you like it. And so you often don't sadly even have a choice. And so I do think it's important to take control of that. Now, how does that happen? I think it takes time, and it takes a lot of trust. Like if you go back to, I guess maybe I'll share a little bit of a longer story, but how many of you are familiar with the Error 404? Good. Hopefully all of you had Error 404. What about Error 402? No one? Well, okay. One person does Error 402. So, I mean, when the internet was designed, Error 402 was a function of being able to not have a paywalled page, but accessed, not because, let's say the two of us make a web page and we want to charge everyone for seeing it. It was the fact that there was no money available on the internet at the time. Think about that. Right, like the earliest founders exists. In lieu of that, of course, we have paywalled and gated content, and that's in the most painful form today, known as subscriptions. How many subscriptions do you all have that you hate because you only watch one Netflix or a movie a month, or maybe consume one article from New York Times?
In Pakistan, people now don't have subscriptions; they have micro.
There you go, and that is the real opportunity, right? So like even these business models that are so extractive are a function of a technological gap that existed within the internet itself. And so when we think about a new infrastructure that sits side by side and fully embedded in the internet, it is to provide assets directly into that internet, right? Into a TCP/IP, into being able to access video gated content. And instead of paying a YouTube $20 a month premium subscription, I can actually pay for my cricket match directly to the person that's actually helping stream it, right? And so that is incredibly empowering, and it brings a lot of value back to the people that are creating content, the people that are writing the stories, the people that are actually building products and connecting directly with the end user, versus having to go through Instagram's data or ads business or TikTok, Google search, so on and so forth. And no different than back in, I don't know, maybe like the early 2000s, where someone asked you to pay for something and you probably scratched your head and said, should I put my credit card information in this thing? Then you move from that to like, should I put my passport information in this thing? To now you're like, please remember everything and never ask me again. Right? And because it's for convenience, but that convenience comes at a very big cost that you don't realize. And we want to bring that cost, not only remove that cost out of that system, but bring that empowerment back to the average individual that is not aware of this. And so this is a very long journey, but in order to make that happen, you need amazing infrastructure that sits right side by side right next to the internet.
Cool. So in what you're building, I do believe that obviously partnerships is a very important part of what you're building, right? And I know you partnered up with some great big names such as Microsoft, NBC Universal, and others. But at the same time, while you're providing DeFi solutions and bringing blockchain technology to all of these big companies, there's also this balance that you need to keep, because you do understand that ideologically, these companies are not meant for Web3 because they have a two ethos, right? And then you have to choose between partnering with someone like that to bring your vision to life versus someone like Myco, which was started with a decentralized ethos. So how do you keep that balance? Because I do understand both are important.
It's a great point. And I don't know how many of you follow things like Dogecoin or meme coins.
Actually, I'm kind of curious. Can someone tell that? Oh, all right. We got some degens in here. I love it. I love it. All right. Many of those articles that came out yesterday where Mark Cuban and Elon Musk both said that they're willing to accept Dogecoin for merch, right? That's basically indicating that there's value to them and a barter system that exists, right? And so, even some of the world's largest companies are realizing that there is value in these systems, and no different than you had very early days of internet culture that people don't really talk about today anymore. There is Web3 culture, and some of y'all are clearly participating, and I love that. At the same time, you do have to bring legitimacy into the space. You need New York Times to no longer just print newspapers and eventually go to the internet. And so this is where we work with partners like NBC Universal, who are trying to unify, NBC Universal owns Fandango, so you can buy your movie ticket, Rotten Tomatoes, so you can complain about the movie that you went to. They own NBC Peacock, and they own Dparse. They are Disney's biggest competitor. The crazy thing is they don't know what's happening across each one of those products or those platforms that they have, because Instagram or Google or someone else is feeding that funnel for conversion for the users. So how does NBC take control back and go direct to the customer? So we're working with them on building products like a wallet, a loyalty system, and even enabling payments so that they can understand who is coming into the theme park, who is using Peacock, and actually be able to understand user behavior, and then ultimately be able to go directly to the user and understand how to sell them more products or give them more things. You talked about Franklin Templeton. Franklin Templeton realizes how expensive it is to issue a money market fund and administer it and distribute it and manage it and all that. And what they're thinking about is if a blockchain can have an issuance of this product, it's far cheaper to manage long term. And so we just announced yesterday, actually, that Franklin Templeton will be launching their money market fund on Aptos. And the cool thing about that product that Franklin has is called Benji. Benji's at the top of Franklin's list in terms of strategic initiatives. So, we spent a lot of time with Jenny Johnson, CEO at Franklin. And her view is, we think that money market fund should be available globally. Maybe in the Middle East, U.S. treasuries are not as accessible. Maybe in Pakistan, maybe in other places. And as long as you can adhere to KYC standards that Franklin Templeton wants to uphold, a fully compliant product, you can have access to savings. That's awesome. That is real economic value. And so, while we're playing around with meme coins and Web3 culture, we're also working with large giants like NBC Universal and folks like Franklin Templeton are moving real initiatives forward. And then also there's, folks like Myco, right? Tesla was not built inside of Ford. All these products that are big companies today, people forget, were started by entrepreneurs and were startups. YouTube was a startup. And innovation in large companies is very, very hard. And so this is why we're very excited to work with Myco, because you guys could be the next YouTube. You are pushing the boundaries of these business models by using new technology. No different than YouTube was thinking about using the internet to put video content out for people. And so we're very excited about folks like you right here and Myco building products just as much as we're excited about large companies as well.
So we're running out of time. A very quick last question because we want to leave people inspired. Last thoughts, anything that you want to leave the founders with, a word of advice or two?
Damn, I gotta think about that.
I guess just going back to the point of like self-confidence, I think, again, it doesn't necessarily just apply to entrepreneurs or founders. I think it's so much broader than that. If I reflect on it, I was very lucky because my mom really built me up. She told me to believe in myself. And she continued to push me to believe in myself, even when I didn't. And kind of when I put it all together, I do think this is one of the most important things that maybe from just like a broader people of color identity perspective is really important. Whether you're sitting in Dubai and building or here in the US, of course, we have to think about these things with cultural nuances and perspective. But I do think it's really, really important to believe in ourselves because we are very important. We're part of these economies globally that without us would not work. And I'm very proud to be sitting here, in this group with very established people and fellow entrepreneurs, shoulder to shoulder, pushing this forward.
Amazing. Thank you, Mo. Thank you.